How's it going, everyone? Nick from Comic Culture here. It's time for Nick at Night, my weekly non-spoiler comic book review show. Man, we got a lot of books to get through, so let's get started right now. So I'm going to go ahead and put my grading scale up. How this works is I'm going to go over each book, and then I'm going to put the cover of that book on the grading scale so you can see how they stack up against each other. Now, with that said, we're going to get into the first publisher. We got DC, because we don't have any Marvel books yet because Penguin didn't come in, and I only got a couple of Marvel books anyway, so no giant loss for me personally, but I got a ton of DC books, so let's get into those. We're going to start with the first One Bad Day that I've ever read before. I've heard they've been really, really good, and so I'm getting into them right now. So we have Clayface right here. I'm loving this book. This one's actually from Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing, and it was phenomenal. It was actually kind of a, what would Clayface be up to nowadays? He's still pursuing that acting career, still trying to be legitimate, still trying to take that passion to the max, right? So he's going kind of like on auditions and things like that, but in classic Clayface style, maybe people aren't ready for his level of intensity, his commitment, his view, something like that. And so he's often rejected from different roles. And so this is a big like revenge story on the people that have kind of turned their back on him in the past. So I would say if you are a big Clayface fan, or you just like the idea of Clayface, maybe you were watching the animated adventures when you were a kid, something like that, and you want to see what Clayface is up to, this is very much in that same vein. It feels just like that character here. I would say the art is awesome as well. We have a lot of great moments where Clayface is using his powers, mostly to, you know, kind of take over other people, to kill them in mysterious ways. So you have to kind of use your imagination there. We do get some Batman in here as well. We meet some friends along the way, some actually true friends for Clayface, people that are in the scene as well. And we get some awesome battles towards the end as well. So if you're into the One Bad Day stuff, you can't go wrong with this one. If you like Clayface from the animated series, check this one out. It was really cool. Continuing with DC, we have Batman and Superman's World Finest. We have issue number 12 on this one. We have Mark Waid back on here. I love this cover by Dan Mora. We have Dick Grayson and Kara Supergirl seemingly on a date here. And what I like is everything's on fire. Like the whole placemat is on fire. There's fire on his shoulder, things like that. And they're both saying check please at the same time. Is it a filler issue? It 100% is a filler issue, but I loved it. It was so fun. The humor and everything like that inside of this issue was great. This is the big Dick Grayson, Kara Supergirl date. They finally go on this date, and we get to see what transpires into here. I will say there's a lot of comedic bits in here. Like, for instance, Dick asks her out on a date while they're in costume, and so he wears a costume, and she spends all day trying to figure out what to wear. And so she gets disappointed showing up at the restaurant and he's in costume. It's just little things like that. That's as spoilery as I'm going to get. There's really nothing to spoil besides just the little nuances in the conversations. It really does make you feel uncomfortable when you're reading this. It is a kind of a date from hell. They just don't know how to act around each other. And I got to side with Supergirl on this one. Dick Grayson's being a little bit of a you-know-what. So it's pretty funny. There's a little random tragedy that happens that kind of brings them together, or so you would think. But doesn't exactly go that way. And then the great part is, in true like date fashion, they both go back to their mentors, Superman and Batman, and they kind of vent about the experiences they had, which I thought was hilarious as well. So it's a pretty great book. Dan Mora's art is incredible in here, and I just like the way that it transpires. I like the way that it rolls out. It was just like a fun little book. And I may have mentioned Dan Mora's art. It's actually a Manuela that's on here, but they do a really good job inside the interior here of just portraying this really absurd, just awkward first date. So this book was great. Filler, yes, but highly enjoyable, also yes. All right, we got the last DC one-shot for Lazarus Planet Omega. This is a number 1, but it's a one-shot from Mark Waid, and this is really great. So if you're into this whole Lazarus planet kind of a thing right now, this Lazarus reign, you're going to dig this one, because this one's actually the conclusion of the Lazarus reign, the storm, the gods, the demons that we're battling and things like that. And so we actually get to see how our heroes persevere inside of here, and it's a cool little story. Artwork is very, very dark. Federici has a great art style, but the only complaint I have is sometimes the facial expressions on our heroes, and then just the overall darkness in general is just too much in this issue right here. And I did notice it on the other issue as well. So let me go ahead and double check real quick. And yeah, we have Mike Perkins on here as well as the artist. I'm not exactly sure who colored. It might have been those two, but it's like every single panel is ultra dark and you really can't see what's going on until you get these like real dramatic electrical scenes, because a lot of our heroes have, either lightning based or like flashy magic powers. So you actually get to see what's going on inside of those panels. But the overall art style, I'd say, is really, really interesting. It's really dramatic, and it's something to be seen. So very beautiful, very dark, but it has a cool little element to it. Like I said, this is the big rallying of our heroes, trying to get their powers back, go against their demons, and they figure out a creative way of doing that. And if you're a big fan of Monkey Prince, he has a cool little cameo in here as well, and the backstory as well. So you get to see a lot of interesting things inside of this book. So is it worth it? I would say this one is worth it. I think the Alpha is worth it, and then the Omega is worth it. Some of the ones in the middle, I can't remember what the names of them, they're a little bit off the beaten path. They weren't necessarily focusing on these characters. They were more like focusing on the C and D list characters, like what are they doing? But, you know, it gives you a bigger complete picture. So Omega, I think, is worth it. Check it out. All right, we have the Dawn of DC Superman issue #1 from Joshua Williamson. And I gotta admit, I have not been reading Superman for a very long time. I heard there's some really cool stuff that were scattered in there, but I have not been reading a Superman proper book in a few years now. So I was a little hesitant jumping in here. Joshua Williamson's a great writer though, and I really wanted to get into this and see exactly what was going on. And with Campbell on the art, you know it's going to be some quality stuff. So I wanted to go ahead and check this out. Now, this is actually a really great jumping on point for Superman fans, especially like me, who have not been paying attention really to what's going on. We have a lot of familiar faces in here. We got some Lex Luthor stuff going on in here. He's behind bars right now, but still pulling the strings as we've always seen him do. Of course, we get some other cameos from some of our favorite friends like Jimmy Olsen, and we have Lois in here as well. And I gotta say, this is just a beautiful book. The art is spectacular in here. The coloring is just great as well. It's a very easy, simple story to follow, and it's setting us up into going to a really interesting direction. And Superman's going to be well equipped here in the near future and fighting a very mysterious, at least to me, villain that we get somewhat revealed towards the end of the book. So I'm going to stay away from those pages over here. Very interesting book. So check it out if you are relatively new to Superman or you haven't been on Superman in quite a long time. It's going to be easy to jump in. It's going to have great artwork, interesting story. Check this one out. So speaking of Superman, we had issue #3 of Space Age Superman. I absolutely love this book from Russell and the Team Allred. I am definitely Team Allred. Mark and Laura Allred, it's something that you have to kind of maybe get a taste for. I remember when I was collecting X-Force back in the day when Allred took over the art around like 106 or 100, something like that. It really, really threw me off. And so I was not really appreciative of that art style at the time, but now that I read something like this, I'm all on board, man, all on board. So Team Allred all the way, and we have Mark Russell on here too. Space Age is like a retelling of the Superman story. They take a lot of liberties with certain characters, with the storylines. They condense things down. It's almost like a life story if you're used to that format of comics. And so I love this one. They set us up with this big, grand kind of inevitability with the Crisis event, and it plays through over the next couple of issues. Of course, we have classic Allred style art in here with our characters and sets and everything like that, especially the coloring as well. So everything is bright and vibrant and clean and exaggerated, and it's really, really cool. So it's a square bound, almost like a giant sized issue. So if you're worried about this thing taking a long time and causing some anxiety in your backstack, don't be. It reads very, very quickly, and it's an enjoyable read as well. And again, it takes its liberties here and there. And for someone like me, don't really care at all. It was a really breathtaking story. Highly recommend this one. Pick up the other two as well. Space Age, you can't lose there. All right, we're going to go into some indie books real quick. We're going to hop over into Image Comics with Saga issue #62. Now, I hope you all appreciate this because I actually took it out of the bag and board. And if you're thinking that's being a little bit dramatic, hold this book in your hands and just look at that color and tell me that Fiona Staples is not one of the best drawers and colorers out there right now, because that is an absolutely gorgeous shading on this book. So I'm going to be extra gentle on here. Now, the last issue of Saga set up an extremely huge thing at the end of the issue, a very, very big cliffhanger. They explore that a little bit in here. And so in true Saga fashion, there's a little bit of heartbreak, but a little bit of hope at the same time. And so we get a little bit of that, and I should have expected it after reading 60-something issues of this comic. But also in true Saga fashion, it's all about family, it's all about heart, and it's all about bringing back some past characters and using them in new creative ways, and then having tragic or happy endings for them, which I love about this book. It is all about that. Fiona Staples continues to be one of the best artists out there, and I absolutely absolutely love everything I'm seeing inside of this book from her, and it's just absolutely breathtaking. And the tone, the conversations, the way that Brian K. Vaughan can kind of pull the whole scene together is absolutely breathtaking. I highly recommend, if you have not read Saga yet, pick up the trades. They are cheap. I think there's 9 or 10 of them now. The 10th one's coming out soon. It's a very fast read. I read them all in about 2 weeks one day last year when this was getting spun back up, and it is highly enjoyable. One of the best books out there. I guarantee it. Check Saga out. And great. Now I got to remove my fingerprints from the cover. There you go. Jumping over into another breathtaking must-read, in my opinion, Image book. We have Ice Cream Man. This is issue number 34 from W. Maxwell Prince, Morazzo, and O'Halloran. And this is an absolutely great read as well. So we're following these two drifters in a way. There's this one young guy, this one older guy. They're kind of going over the rules of the road a little bit with these guys that are hopping trains, you know, don't stay in one place for too long and things like that, going over some of the rules. But they're having this like in-depth conversation about the craziest things they've ever heard, the craziest stories they've ever heard. And they're both trading those stories. And some of those stories may happen on the road over here and actually torments them along the way. So in true Ice Cream Man fashion, we get a little bit of horror, we get a little bit of like introspective, deep dive into the human thought, human psyche. I love it in here. And of course, we have Morazzo on the art, so we get some insane, incredible artwork and coloring and everything. It's just absolutely breathtaking. Ice Cream Man has a way of just digging into those places that no other comic book can possibly dig into and pulls out these emotions that you never even knew existed. So you have to be reading Ice Cream Man. If you have the guts for it, I would highly recommend picking this one up. They're basically one-shots. There's a very slight continuing thread through all these. It's more of a theme than anything. It's not like like an arc. Read it from the beginning because it is absolutely breathtaking, and you get to pick up those little Easter eggs around the way. So Ice Cream Man, you got to be reading this too. Continuing with Image Comics, we have Junkyard Joe issue number 5 right here. Oh my gosh, I'm telling you guys, from Jeff Johns, Gary Frank, and we have Brad Anderson on this as well. What a week for Image Comics. I'm telling you, the best books out for Image all came out this week, and I'm so happy about this one. Again, Junkyard Joe, a continuation of sorts from the book Geiger that came out about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago at this point. Time really flies. But this is kind of a retelling. This is the origin of Junkyard Joe, and then it takes place in Vietnam originally, and then it fast forward to, I'm going to say, a present day, and then Geiger's like 50 years into the future. So it's kind of an origin story and then a mid-origin story at the same time, and then we get to see what we presume is the conclusion inside of Geiger. But you got to be checking this one out. If you're into war stories, people struggling with PTSD, family dramas, things like that, this is the book for you. I'm telling you, it's a great book. We have our Vietnam vet over here who's retired. He lost his wife recently. He was a cartoonist. He drew what he imagined back in Vietnam because it was never really explained like what Junkyard Joe was or what he was doing there. He kind of made up this robot in his head, he thought, and he then created a cartoon for it. So we have this guy drawing these Sunday morning cartoons of this Junkyard Joe character, basically a figment of his imagination, and this guy is actually alive and coming back into his life for some reason, and we're exploring that reason in here. But of course, a piece of government tech goes missing, so you're going to have some very dangerous people on the lookout as well. And we get, of course, our new neighbor family caught up in the mix in here. So it is an absolutely great book, full of drama, full of amazing artwork. Then we get like these little spreads like this, and it's absolutely breathtaking. I'm loving the art style on here. It's very dramatic. It just makes it feel so real and so raw when I absolutely love this. Junkyard Joe, I feel like a broken record, but it has to be on your pull list. Check this one out. A few more Image books to go. We have Once Upon a Time at the End of the World from Jason Aaron in Alexandria. And this book is absolutely great too. A Love in the Wasteland, this one is called here. So basically it's a post-apocalyptic world. We have two main characters in here. One was pretty much in an ivory tower, kind of growing up with all the resources you could possibly want. The other one was in this weird spin-off of like a Boy Scout / Girl Scout troop, and they've gone mad. They've really taken all the rules and the books and the philosophies and everything and completely flipped them on their head, and they adapted to a wasteland type society. And so we get to see those people function inside of this wasteland. So these two people essentially get together. She's on the run from this scout troop, and he's kind of in over his head because he hasn't had to deal with all this stuff in the past. And so this is kind of what happens when they're being chased by this Boy Scout troop right here. I'm going to call them a Boy Scout. They're called something else. I can't remember what they're called inside of this book, but essentially that's what they are. And this book is great. It's a lot about the relationship from these two people. Again, one's real soft and one's real hardened. And so it's a cool dynamic between those two characters. And there's a lot of humor between them, and they're teaching each other things about each other and about the way that they live. And I think that's really awesome as well, because they're kind of rubbing off on each other a little bit. And what's great about this one is we get a lot more lore about the troop, the evil like wasteland troop that we've discovered in the past couple of issues. We get a lot more about their origin story, what they stand for, and why exactly they're after our one of our main characters in this book. So this one is really great as well. If you like post-apocalyptic stories, if you like people running from like evil groups, this book is really great too. You got to check this one out. All right, we're almost done with Image. We have a couple more books. We have Black Cloak issue number 2 from Kelly Thompson, and I loved issue number 1. It was actually a double-sized issue. And we have Meredith McLaren on the art as well. Now, the art style is something that grew on me a little bit. I'll give you an example of that right there. It looks pretty simple, pretty innocent, easy coloring, things like that. But there's actually a lot of emotion and a lot of things you can pull out of the artwork that is actually really complementary to the storytelling in here, because the storytelling is a very easy, fluid, vibrant story, and we get these cool color shifts when we're talking about some stuff in the past, like these memories and whatnot. So we get some interesting coloring for those moments in here. But basically, our main character, she is a detective. There is a royal murder that has taken place, a former lover of hers, and she has a lot of history with the royal family in general. She's been exiled, but she has a lot of history with this royal family. So she's taken it upon herself to help try to solve this murder, kind of as a personal and professional favor for her department and this family she used to grow up with. And this world is very mythological. There's like mermaids and things like that, fairies and whatnot. And again, it's a real interesting world. We learn a lot of things in this issue here about kind of like her backstory and some of the other key players in here as well. And so I'm loving this book. It's told in a very interesting way. Again, the pace is beautiful. I think there's a lot of cool, interesting things and places this book is going to go. And I think the art matches the tone perfectly. So I'm loving Black Cloak. Are you guys reading it? Let me know down below. Next Image book we read this week was Lovesick. This is issue number 5 from Luana Vecchio. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But guys, if you're into some like Red Room kind of stuff, but with a little bit of a cannibal twist, man, this book is for you. This is the origin of Domino, who basically runs this Red Room here for all these people who want to be on main stage. They want to be brutalized. They want to be mutated. They want to be murdered by Domino on the dark web for money and profit. And this book is insane. It's sexy, it's brutal, it's shocking. There's a lot of weird crap that happens inside of here. There's like this weird cannibal cult kind of a thing where they're kind of eating all these people and auctioning them off to the highest bidders and whatnot. So again, this is the origin of Domino. She's been raised and picked up by this real sadistic guy, and she's kind of like his slave in a way, right? She's kind of like chained up in the corner, and she does whatever he tells him to do, and he's brutalizing and murdering people around her, and she's like waiting her turn at this moment. But he's molding her, you know? He's working on that brainwashing component that some of the people around them in their area have gone through, and she has not yet. So I think that's where we're going essentially inside of this book. I can't really show you anything in here because it's like highly perverse, and there's just some insane stuff that happens inside of here. But Lovesick, if you have that itch that needs to be scratched, man, this is going to do it. And make sure you get that cold shower ready because it's pretty intense sometimes. All right, we have a new Image book from Tim Seeley and Tony Fleece. This is Local Man issue number 1. And what I love about this book is we have a legitimate comic story in the front with this one guy that's kind of been exiled from this Image in the 90s style team of superheroes. So we get his little backstory and where he's going. He kind of goes back home and has to argue with his parents and argue with friends and things like that. This book is very much in the same vein of the first couple of issues of Radiant Black. So if you liked Radiant Black, kind of this failed person coming back home and having to deal with all the drama and the crap that they left behind in their hometown with their parents and friends. If you like that part of storytelling, if you like that theme, I think you're going to love this because it also adds a little superhero twist at the end. And I think it's great. And I'll give you a little sample of what the art looks like. Again, he's just kind of hanging out. We don't exactly know who he is or what he's able to do just yet inside the book. We do explore it as the book goes on. He's essentially like a bullseye kind of a character, or a Hawkeye, very, very proficient at hitting his target, right? And we get a few glimpses here and there about what actually set him off and what got him fired from the team. We have some old rivals showing up and trying to take him on inside of bars and things like that. But there's a lot of nuance in here and a lot of cool conversations that I think you'll appreciate, so I'll save that for you all. Then when you're done reading that book, you can actually flip it around, and there's actually a copy, like a very, very image in the 90s cover right here showing Local Man #1, and it's drawn and written like it was a comic back then, but I think that was really, really cool. So you get to explore the team he was on and maybe a little hints of where the drama started, and they explore it in here too. He's kind of a new person in this well-established team, and he might not be fitting in as well as he was hoping to fit in, and so we get to see that inside of the backside of this issue. So Local Man, you kind of get 2 copies of a different book all in one. So check this one out. I thought it was a pretty good start. It looks like it's going to go in an interesting direction. Let me know what you thought. All right, we're going to have a scattering of a whole bunch of other indie books. We're going to jump right into it with Vault Comics. We have Barbaric Hell to Pay issue #2, and this is from Marisi and Golden. And all I can really say is if you like Barbaric, if you've read Barbaric at all, this is so much more of everything that you love probably about that book, and it's incredible. If you haven't been reading this, oh my God, where do I even start? So basically we have this barbarian who was cursed to basically live forever and do the right thing. Now he's equipped with this talking axe who gets drunk off of blood. And so basically a lot of the first volume is him and this axe having this weird dialogue. The axe is always looking for something to kill, but he has to hone it back a little bit and do the right thing instead of just murdering recklessly. He meets a magic wielder called Scorn, and he has an old friend that shows up as well. They kind of team up and they go about their way. In the second volume here, Owen the Barbarian actually gets cast off into hell, and then Scorn actually takes control of the axe, and they're on a mission right now with some other allies to get Owen back out of hell. But while in hell, Owen's got his own battles down there to deal with, his own demons to fight, and it's pretty hilarious. The frog guys, they're no joke. You gotta watch out for those frog guys. So this book is awesome. I love the art style in here. The dynamic between the characters and the axe are just awesome. I'm loving that a lot. And it looks like we're gonna get into the backstory of Scorn, who's our female lead right here. She's got these tattoos all over her. She's a magic user, and those tattoos are of weapons, and she can actually use those and summon them to actually kill people, which I think is really, really cool and pretty unique. So Barbaric, it's more of what you love. It does not slow down at all. It explores some interesting new places. This is a great book. If you're into the indie scene, check it out. Going over to Dynamite Comics with Disney, we have Darkwing Duck issue #2. Again, this is like a Saturday morning cartoon. It's everything that we know and love about Darkwing Duck in comic book form. It's bright, it's vibrant. It takes moments where it's a little bit serious, but then it's just littered with humor and over-the-top action scenes. Darkwing Duck actually gets attacked by another classic villain in here inside of essentially a toy store. He has to do everything he can do to escape that scene, while at the same time saving his family and friends from the mayhem as well. So again, it's chock full of just hilarious moments and over-the-top stuff. And then at the end of the day, it has a little bit of heart too. So I'm loving this book. If you liked this show when you were a kid, you got to be checking this book out. It's like reading the cartoon, which I think is so, so cool. And I wish some other books would come out and have the same feel, the same flavor, and the same vibe that this book has. So Darkwing Duck, if you liked it growing up, you're going to love it in comic book form. Check it out. All right, the next book we got was from Whatnot Publishing. This is Liquid Kill issue #1. I think this is by Hoven. I'm not going to be able to pronounce any of these names, so I apologize for there. But Liquid Kill was an interesting book. I like the solicitation. I like the cover art. This is actually a B variant, maybe a C variant, or it's actually way over there. It's a G variant, actually. And so not exactly sure what's going on. Looks like we have someone in bondage almost in a way, and we have someone over them. And so going to be checking this book out. Now, again, this book is in the same vein of Lazarus Planet in a way when it comes to the coloring. It's a very dark book, so you don't really know what's exactly going on. I would say the time period or the style of the book is very much in like a cyberpunk era. So we have a lot of weird advanced tech, or at least maybe advanced cultures, something like that. That's the perception anyway. Everything is over-sexualized. There's all these like underground things where people can get whatever they want, right? Whatever drugs they want, whatever women they want, things like that. It's kind of mob ruled and everything. And so this is actually a story about a young child that was rescued, and then that child, I think, growing up to have some kind of a power, some kind of authority over the area. And so it's not very dialogue heavy. That's the one thing I would say. The art is great, but it's got like this gray black tone through the entire thing. And I think that was lacking. Some of the battle scenes, some of the fight scenes, those parts where you need that kinetic flow between the panels, it was kind of lacking here and there. Your imagination had to fill in the gaps a little bit. So I would say it's interesting. If you're into like some samurai or cyberpunk kind of stuff, maybe check this one out. If you like Ghost in the Shell, but maybe like the aesthetics, not necessarily a story or anything, maybe give this one a flip through and you can check it out. I'll probably get another copy or another issue number 2, and I'll see where it goes from there, and we'll make a decision if we're going to keep it or not. Didn't blow me away. It was interesting, but yeah, maybe check it out for yourself. Next book we got is actually from Dark Horse Comics, Star Wars High Republic Adventures, issue number 1, The Nameless Terror story arc on here. So I think we already have a High Republic Adventures, if I'm not mistaken, from Dark Horse. But we have the Nameless Terror banner across the bottom, which helps us differentiate those. Not quite cardstock, whatever you want to call this, glossy cover. Appreciate that. And so where are we with this book here? We have a series of Jedis assumingly answering the call, right? They're always scanning the planets or scanning the universe for distress signals and things like that and trying to intervene. And this issue here, they actually get taken out on the way to somewhere and they get derailed, sidetracked, crash landing on top of a planet. And they're trying to see what the heck is going on, who hit them, why'd they hit them, and what kind of bad news was unleashed in the process. Where are they? Where are they going to go? You know, who's going to go where? Who's injured? Who's not? That whole thing is explored inside of here. And we get to understand that there's some kind of an evil thing that was actually inside this other ship, perhaps causing the crash, maybe to begin with. As we explore a little bit more, we'll find out. And this monster, or whatever it is, has an ability to kind of drive people insane. And so we're going to explore that some more in here. Art style, I think it's actually really good. I think it's better than what we typically see inside of a Star Wars book. So shout out to that team right there. If you haven't had enough Star Wars books yet and you want some more, 4-issue run, not a huge commitment. So far, it's fairly interesting. Check out Nameless Terror. All right, we're going to close things out with Boom Studios, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, TMNT, volume number 2, issue number 3. Say that 10 times fast. So we get some awesome Dan Mora art on here, which I'm absolutely loving. I like this cover too. This is so cool with like that Casey Jones kind of character on the front there. And I'm loving where this is going. So the benefit of an issue number, or of a volume number 2, is typically you can take things that were villains in volume number 1 and you can flip the script a little bit, make them allies. And that's a little bit what we have on here. We have a main overall threat, right? Rita's kind of taken over everything and she's invading Earth with this unstoppable army and technology and things like that. So you're going to have to rely on some unlikely allies to step up and help you win the day, because your motives or your enemies are slightly aligned at the moment. And so you got to do whatever you got to do to help everything out. Some of the double crossings and things like that we saw in the previous issues, they might be resolving inside of here. So I think that's great. Some of the technology is changing. So some of our heroes are taking on new forms, which I think is really cool. I don't want to show you those pages at all, but just know that it's awesome. It's awesome. It's really cool. And so it makes me wish that I wish that I grew up with Power Rangers rather, and not just TMNT. But this is awesome. Dan Mora's art's incredible. And I love the interaction between the Rangers and the Turtles and the villains. It brings back so much nostalgia. It's really cool. Check this one out. All right, Something's Killing the Children, issue number 29, James Tynan and Deladera on the art. Now, our last issue was the first confrontation between our Cutter lady and Erica Slaughter. It was this thing that's been building up for issue after issue after issue. But instead of just having a classic battle to win, she wants to make a game out of it, and she wants Erica to be more of her pawn and seeing what she can actually do. She wants to make it a fair fight, an interesting fight. And so that's what we're going to do inside of here. So Erica's trying to get her bearings, get some people safe, and they're going to square off, presumably, here in the near future. The rest of this issue in here is basically a big conversation between Cecilia and the Red Dragon, or the Dragon, and they're talking about the politics between the houses. You know, what do you need to do to actually ascend? What's the right frame of mind to be in at this moment? Is Erica a liability? Is this Cutter Girl a liability as well? What do we do about those two? What should we do? How do you think like the dragon, right? And so that's basically the big message inside of here. So the majority of this book is a conversation between those two characters. It's interesting, but it really makes me mad because I was really hoping that we were going to get an action-packed like battle between Erica and Cutter. We didn't get that in the last issue, and now we're kind of taking a step back and we're back into the politics of things, which is interesting, but I just want more. I want more from this book. It seems like we're kind of stalling and just kind of dragging our feet at this moment. I just want some action, man. Issue number 29 kind of let me down, but it was interesting at the same time. That's kind of the theme of Something's Killing the Children right now with me. It's fun, but it just drags its feet. And then you get a little bit of action, a little bit of hope, a little bit of like, yeah, that's what I missed. and then they slam on the brakes. That's how I feel. What do you guys feel? If you're still reading it, let me know down below. But guys, that's everything I read. That was a whole lot of books. Let me know what you read down below and what your favorite books of the week were. But as always, like, subscribe, and share. Hit that bell notification to be alerted of future videos, and check out the join button. It's brand new. I have a tier for everybody. But that's it for me. Happy reading, and I'll see you guys down below in the comments.